If I had it my way, I sure wish these conferences would release these schedules during the off season. The season ends, release the schedule, give us something to talk about. Not that these days we don't have enough to talk about each and every day in college football, 24/7, 365 all the time, but there are games to be played. We'll talk about those. I wish certain teams wouldn't cheat so we could then again, just talk about the games. We got a big week 10 coming up in college football, but as far as I can see, we've got the Big 12, the ACC, and now the Big 10 have released schedules for 2024. I've not looked into the SEC or the Pac 12, but I'm guessing they have as well. I find the ACC situation rather interesting with Cal and Stanford, of course, and SMU. Don't forget about them. I sometimes do. Cal, Stanford, and SMU joining the league. And the ACC release schedules going all the way through 2027 this week. With everything going on and with 15 channels to run, we have yet to catch up with the ACC scheduling breakdown, but we'll get to it. Also, my intent, and I don't care if I have to release this in the middle of Saturday's games, we break down the ACC race in a huge game with Louisville and Virginia Tech on Saturday for sole possession of second place to take on most likely Florida State in the ACC championship game. Florida State will wrap that spot up with a win on Saturday against Pitt. But we are here to talk about the Big Ten. It is a special edition of the Big Ten Live Show. How about that? You don't have to wait until next Monday. Get a special edition of the Big Ten Live Show, and let's run through the matters at hand. First and foremost, this meeting, conference call with the Big Ten coaches and Commissioner Tony Petitti. Let's go through that, and then we will run through some schedules and take your calls. Here we go. The Amazon links in the description section of all the videos. When you shop on Amazon, think about it this week. The next time you shop on Amazon, let's get the link in the description section. Same shopping experience. Doesn't change anything. And you contribute to the channel that way. You can do that. Consider that. You can contribute to the channel without spending a penny. Let Amazon do it for you. Grab the Amazon link in the description section of all the videos. All right, I've got the glasses on. That means two things. Number one, I'm too lazy to put my contacts in. And number two, that I'm ready to read. Here we go. This is from Pete Thamel, ESPN. Vast majority of Big Ten coaches expressed their frustrations with the ongoing signal stealing investigation of Michigan in a video call with Commissioner Tony Petitti on Wednesday. Call took 90 minutes, included nearly an hour without Michigan coach Jim Harbaugh, who hung up and then let the conference's coaches speak freely about the investigation. According to 5 sources familiar with the call. Familiar with the call. So that's the first buzzword we're hearing. That doesn't mean they're necessarily on the call or were on the call, but they have some familiarity with the call. A chorus of voices encouraged Petitti to take action against Michigan in a call that was described as both intense and emotional. Would you not have loved to have been a fly on the wall or been able to bug the phone system, the conference call from the Big Ten? Quote, collectively, the coaches want the Big Ten to act right now, said a source familiar with the call. What are we waiting on? We know what happened. Okay. Big Ten scheduled a call with athletic directors and Petitti for Thursday afternoon. Goes up to the athletic directors, of course. The NCAA has been investigating Michigan for nearly 2 weeks. As Big Ten confirmed the NCAA sign stealing investigation on October 19th. And then all the other things that we know about Connor Stallions and the purchasing of tickets. Anything new here? 35 games, 17 stadiums. We know that. Coaches used words like tainted, fraudulent, and unprecedented on the call to describe Michigan's signal stealing scheme, as has been alleged. Much of the call, according to sources, was coaches explaining to Petitti both how it worked and how it impacted them and their programs. In-person opponent scouting and using electronic equipment to steal signs are prohibited. All right. People don't understand the seriousness of this, said another source, how it truly impacted the game plan to truly know if it's a run or a pass. People don't understand how much of an advantage that was for Michigan. There was anger interspersed throughout the call, as one source described the sentiment as, quote, every game they played is tainted. Coaches acknowledged on the call the reality that the NCAA enforcement timeline won't impact Michigan this season. Michigan 8-0, number 3 in the rankings. Sources describe Petiti as listening carefully to the coaches, but not tipping his hand in what direction he might go. Smart guy. Sources expressed curiosity as to whether the Big Ten is truly interested in taking action or is just listening to coaches so they can be heard. I'm going to guess the latter. I don't believe the Big Ten is going to take any action on this. They are going to let the investigation go from start to finish and find a conclusion. And maybe that's been done behind the scenes, possibly. The Big Ten technically has authority under its sportsmanship policy to punish Michigan or members of its coaching staff. That's been considered unlikely in this case in the near future, as it's unusual to have an NCAA case unfolding in real time. While plenty of evidence has emerged in media reports, the league would likely be unable to use it as a fact to set and make a decision. Prior to the call, another source said, I don't think the Big Ten understood how upset everyone was. The tenor of the call was asking the Big Ten to show leadership, the conference, and the presidents. An unprecedented violation of the rules would require unprecedented action from the Big Ten. Sounds like it's 13 against 1. So Michigan is, of course, a mighty member of the Big Ten, and the Big Ten is in a tough spot and does not want to act against Michigan, believe me. But 13 against 1, or so it seems, could heavily influence all of this. All right. And unfortunately for the Big Ten, this is the team that is the two-time champion and the team that could win the conference again and is currently undefeated. Let's say this was Wisconsin. Well, it would still be a scandal, still need to be cleaned up, but they would not be the front runner to play for a championship and having won the last 2 championships in the conference. Wow. All right. So that's enough of that for me. Certainly, we will take your calls and questions and comments there in the chat. We accept your super chat contributions as well. Of course, you can also directly contribute to the Voice of College Football at Venmo, PayPal, Cash App. Mark Rogers TV will get that banner up here at some point. But again, Cash App, Venmo, PayPal. It's a direct contribution to the Voice of College Football, as opposed to the super chat is also effective, but there are some filters there, as you may be aware. All right, let's get to the schedules. I so much more want to talk about the schedules for 2024. We appreciate that we've got somebody waiting on the line. We will get to them in just a second. We want to go through some of these schedules, so let's do that. But give me a call. The link is in the chat, and I will get the link into the description section of the video as well. Here we go. We've got Illinois' schedule for 2024. So we see it right there. Illinois is going to be taking on Nebraska, Penn State, Oregon, Rutgers, and Northwestern on the road. And they've got home games against Purdue, Michigan, Minnesota, and Michigan State. So think about it this way. Illinois currently plays a Big Ten Western Division schedule. Therefore, Next season in 2024, they will not be playing Iowa or Wisconsin. They're playing Purdue, Minnesota, Rutgers, and Northwestern. So they get 6 opponents out of the Big Ten West now, only 4 next year. So they are playing 3 teams out of the Big Ten Eastern Division. No, actually, they're playing 4 out of the West, 4 out of the current West, 4 out of the current East, and then they only get 1 additional game out of the Pac-12, the current Pac-12, and that's Oregon. Illinois at Oregon. How about that game? And so, man, with Penn State and Michigan on the schedule in from the Big Ten East, that's a more difficult schedule, certainly. But you're basically supplanting just the one game that is different than what it would have been. But more games out of the Big Ten, Eastern Division, current division, Penn State, and Michigan State, and Rutgers. As we get to further schedules here, we're going to see a big discrepancy. We don't see it there too much with Illinois. It is a tougher schedule, but not by leaps and bounds. Let's get to Indiana. So Indiana, and we see a picture there of Tom Allen, who may not be coaching this schedule. Indiana plays one of the first games against the new teams from the Pac-12 in taking on UCLA in the second week of the season out at the Rose Bowl. So Indiana out at the Rose Bowl, possibly with a new head coach in that game. Indiana currently plays 3 teams out of the Big Ten West. They're going to be playing Purdue, Nebraska, and Northwestern. So they still only play 3 out of the West, out of the current West. And then they play UCLA and Washington. So that still brings Ohio State, Michigan State. So trade a Penn State for a Washington, UCLA. And you've got Ohio State, Michigan State. And then you also have Maryland. So they are missing a game with Rutgers out of the East. So no Rutgers, no Penn State, but they get UCLA and Washington. That seems like a bad trade. So Indiana's schedule slightly more difficult, and we've got to base it on how good we believe these teams are going to be next season, how good they typically are. Of course, we don't know. Things change, teams change, they elevate, they decline. So that is part of the deal. All right, let's move it on to the real analysis comes with the Big Ten Western Division teams. So here we've got Iowa. So here's the deal with Iowa and all the teams in the West. So Iowa, in a sense, has a difficult run in this because they are keeping on their schedule what could turn out to be, in the long haul, the 3 toughest teams out of the Big Ten West. They've got protected rivalries against Nebraska, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. They lose Purdue, Northwestern, and Illinois. They lose the 3 worst football playing schools in the long term. They lose the 3 worst on a regular basis. So in this 2024 season, they've got Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Nebraska out of the West, and they also keep Northwestern. So they're losing Purdue and Illinois. They've got Ohio State, Michigan State, and Maryland out of the East. So think of it this way. They always play 3 teams out of the East. So that is not changed in 2024. Ohio State, Michigan State, Maryland. But they pick up UCLA to replace one of the Western Division teams and Washington. So they're losing, get this trade, they're losing Purdue and Illinois, and they're picking up Washington and UCLA. That's the net result of the transition from playing in the Western Division for Iowa and now playing in the new Big Ten. That's significant. We've got Maryland And we've got this lineup. Of course, Maryland plays in the East, so they always play Michigan State, Indiana. They always play Rutgers and Penn State, so they keep 4 of the 6. They lose Ohio State and Michigan. How about that deal? So Maryland getting their brains beat out by Ohio State and Michigan every year. They beat Michigan their first year in the Big Ten in 2014, and they have lost every other year. They have lost 9 consecutive times to Ohio State by an average score of like 50-something to 15, and they lose Ohio State and Michigan this first year. So that's a break. They've got out of the West Iowa, Minnesota, and Northwestern. So again, it's very clear cut in making this analysis because they always play 3 teams in the West. So it'd just be like another year playing Iowa, Northwestern, and Minnesota. But instead of playing Ohio State and Michigan, they are playing USC and Oregon. So that's a little easier, probably a little easier, but basically it's a similar schedule for Maryland, just much different look to it. Michigan, all right, the maize and blue. And we know how easy their schedule has been this year, but it's going to get tough here in a couple of weeks. All right. They play out of the West, Minnesota, Illinois, and Northwestern. So again, perfect example. They play 3 teams in the West now. They will play 3 teams in the West at least next season. Minnesota, Illinois, and Northwestern. So that's pretty typical of what we would see out of Michigan. But they're losing 2 opponents out of the East in favor of USC and Oregon. So who are they losing out of the East? No game against Penn State, no game against Maryland. So trade Penn State and Maryland for USC and Oregon. That's a bad trade. Michigan's schedule somewhat tougher. All right, let's do one more and take some calls. Here we go. We got Michigan State. And for Michigan State, we've got 3 games against the West. What do we have? We've got Purdue. We've got Illinois and Iowa. Purdue, Illinois, Iowa. Again, they make this very clear to analyze because they're staying, for most of these teams, with 3 teams against that are currently in the other division, which is the format right now. So for Michigan State, they are going to miss. So obviously they always have to play Michigan. That's a protected rivalry. So Michigan State will always play Michigan. And other than that, they get stuck with Ohio State. They're missing Penn State. And is that the only team in the... Yes. So basically they've traded Penn State for Oregon. So the Big Ten has done a pretty solid job of maintaining balance here. You don't see a large discrepancy, and that's not easy to do. You don't, with all these protected rivalries, that's not that easy to do, but they've kept it fairly balanced. When you see a power come off the schedule, you typically see another power come on the schedule. But the Iowa exchange is the worst one right now for any of the teams that we've reviewed. And of course, we already knew these matchups. What we are seeing now is the order of the matchup. So we can always go through, does anyone have some kind of ridiculous, daunting run? And for Michigan State, their toughest run is playing Ohio State, Oregon, Iowa, and Michigan consecutively. That would be rather rough. All right, let's go to the phone lines. We got, wow, now this is an honor. Now, you didn't realize that when you tuned in to the Big Ten Live Show, special edition, by the way, that we would hear from Connor the Stallions. But we are. Look at that.
What's up, Mark? How you doing, man?
I didn't know who was bringing on here.
Hey, man, you like that handle?
Yes. Keep switching it up. You're keeping me guessing. I had no idea.
Yeah, man.
You.
Gotta have fun with it. Man, this is becoming a movie script at this point. Don't you agree?
It is becoming a movie script, and
I mean, you couldn't write this.
Yeah. Has anybody found out a little bit more about the Western Michigan sideline antics? Whether that's
That's
real?
what I was going to talk about, that man. And I think it's him. I think it's him. They haven't confirmed it, but they also haven't confirmed it's not him. But man, that is some Mission Impossible, Tom Cruise level espionage right there, man. That is insane to me. And have do you know all the details of what they know so far about that?
No, I don't. I think when
Okay.
you tell me, it'll refresh my memory on a few, but I've not dug too deep.
Okay, we'll start with this one. He doesn't even have a sideline pass on. He has a visitor bench pass, which is what only the visiting coaches are allowed to have. So
Yeah,
just start with
I did
that.
hear that. So let's start with that. So I would think that whomever's involved, of course, the NCAA is, that they're talking to Western Michigan to find out
It's
who's
Central, just real quick.
Central Michigan. I'm sorry. Sorry, Western. Central Michigan. The
Yeah, they
Chippewa.
didn't get the honor.
Yes. So to determine, okay, what is your process in submitting passes? Who is responsible for approving this? Why did you approve it? Yeah.
And then secondly, his name isn't on any of the lists.
It is not.
It's not.
Oh.
So I mean,
pass.
I don't know how he did it.
If he's able to pull off all this other stuff, he could pull off building a laminate.
Yeah, I honestly don't know how he did it. I mean, there's two trains of thoughts. One train of thought is I don't know how he did it. He pulled something off that's crazy. The other train of thought is the coaching staff would have had to have done it for him and purposely not put his name. But the other problem with that is the AD would have to be involved in giving a visitor bench pass. It's just wild, man. And then you look at. Go ahead.
Yeah, the visitor bench pass that is that pokes a few holes into my theory, because what I was going to come back at you with is when I worked at ESPN, we had an ESPN ID card. I know people that I worked with that would show up at NFL games and just show that, and the guards just assume, oh, you work for ESPN. There's some kind of connection, whether ESPN's broadcasting the game or not. Just that, okay, and you're on the field.
Yeah, I don't. And then you look at his, I've looked at all the pictures. He's wearing a wig. The dude's bald. He has to be wearing a wig. And this is me assuming it's him when I say this, because I think it's him. I 100% believe it's him. Like, it's going to take a lot for me to.
Yeah. Oh, so it definitely could be him. Yeah.
Yeah. So that would mean he's wearing a wig. He has a goatee, either real or fake. I don't even know. And and to me, it looks he's wearing Ray-Ban camera glasses. Did you see that part?
No, I wouldn't have been able to notice.
So there's a video going around. Josh Pate posted it.
Yep.
Where he's on the sideline and it's a little blue light at the corner of the glasses. So not only did he sneak on the sideline somehow, blended in perfectly. I mean, the getup was on point. Blend into the coaching staff. He's wearing camera spy glasses, pretty much. Supposedly, I always gotta say supposedly because it's not yet proven. Just think about that for a second. That is some Catch Me If You Can, Leonardo DiCaprio level espionage, man.
It's a great movie, by the way. So now this is what we were talking about the other day with the criminal mind. And when I say criminal, he didn't break any laws, but rule-breaking mind of some of it's genius, but some of he may have been missing some things, because his long-term goal is to be the head coach at Michigan. And I don't necessarily know that this is the way to do it. It obviously has ended all of those hopes.
Well, you can't rationalize, to me, what at this point is a crazy person. You know what I'm saying? Like, you could be smart, but if you're smart and crazy, rationality doesn't answer the equation.
No, no, we've
So
seen leaders like that. So, yeah, to write 550 pages on anything, I don't know what in the world he'd be writing 500. I believe in exhaustive work, but man,
yeah, man, this is just some I can't. And the thing is, he could be. We don't even know this yet because they should look at all the prior Friday night games. I know a lot of teams don't play Friday nights,
yeah.
but if any of rivals, really only Michigan State plays Friday night, huh? I'm trying to think of another rival that plays Friday night.
Yeah, for some reason, Michigan State started doing that 10, 12 years ago. I'm trying to think. Illinois played some Friday nights early in the season. Um,
So I wonder if they could look back because I want to put it past him to be on other sidelines at this point, man. This dude pulled out all the stops.
yeah,
Like
if he was able to pull it off once, then
now, great question to me is how could he avoid getting his name on that list, do all those things, but then leave such a paper trail with the other stuff? It's kind of doesn't make the only thing I could think of that would make that make sense is if he felt like when he sent people out that he wasn't breaking the rules per se, and he might have felt like if I just put it in my name, don't cover it up, that part of it isn't breaking the rule. But maybe he felt like what he did on the sideline versus CMU was definitely breaking the rule, so he made sure to try to cover his tracks. I mean, it's getting crazy, man.
yeah. So I follow that line of thinking, but if you are breaking the rules in some ways and not in other ways, but those other ways in which you're not breaking the rules can be tracked, but it's very sketchy, then you would think that he would have realized that those things are going to be looked into.
That's what I mean, though. I feel like maybe when he read the bylaws, he was like, "Oh, this isn't in his mind. This is his mind,
Yeah.
obviously. He's not actually breaking the rules, so he didn't care to leave his name on stuff." But when it came to obviously going on the sideline dressing in coach gear, that's clearly a violation of the rule. I mean, there's no debate about it. You know, that's the only thing I could think of. So and then the Big Ten, man, they could definitely act on this. But I don't know if you've looked into. They have their own bylaws when it comes to this. They can act on it, but they even have a procedure they have to go through before any punishment can be levied. It's not as long as the NCAA, nothing like that, but you can find it on. People have been posting the procedure book on Twitter, but it's actually like a pretty step-by-step process to get to the end result. It's not like the commissioner can just come out and be like, yeah, this is the punishment, blah, blah, blah. No. They actually have to initiate their own investigation first, let that play through, and then the commissioner has to. Now the commissioner can decide the time frame of a response, but then he has to give Michigan time to respond, but he can say like you got a week. That's kind of the main difference between the Big Ten and the NCAA. But then even that, if it's considered a major violation to the sportsman policy, it still has to go to a committee within the Big Ten.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
what
they
I'm
decide.
seeing right here. Yeah, that involves the chancellors and the presidents.
So yeah, I wanted to address it's not as simple as the commissioner coming out tomorrow and being like, "Hey, they can't go to the Big Ten championship game." Like that's not how it works.
Yeah, and that makes total sense because you're not going to put that kind of weight and power into one man's hands who is just overseeing, athletics for 14 schools.
Yeah, and they're and they could be liable. They don't do their own due diligence. I mean, they could be liable. Now, I'll say this: we're gonna find out a lot, and it's gonna show. I think it's gonna show how dumb a decision it was to cheat. Because if these next 5 weeks happen and they just look the same, like there's no drop off, you don't see you know what I'm saying? It's gonna show how stupid of a decision it was to even cheat in the first place.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And I got to say, Michigan man, I can appreciate your unbiased approach to all this. You're just finding facts and trying to dig up as much as you possibly can and figure it out. But yeah, I made that comment the other night that actually, for those people that are arguing that it didn't change the results, I don't think anyone can make that claim one way or the other. That's impossible to state one way or the other how much it changed the results or the level of play on the field. But actually, that would cause it to
Yeah, it
be
makes it
even more.
worse.
That causes it to be even more stupid. If you're not elevating your level of play and changing results, then you cheated for nothing.
Yeah, it makes it worse. And honestly, at this point, I can't. I do think Connor Stalions is a lone wolf at this point. I cannot imagine Michigan's coaching staff sending him to the side. If that's him,
I know.
sending him to the sideline of a. I just to me, I just at this point, I'm on the side of he acted alone in when it came to stretching and breaking the rules, because I just can't see Jim Harbaugh condoning that. Because if he did condone that, that's crazy. I'm not taking that leap yet. I gotta actually see some connections to take that leap.
Yeah, well, this has been crazy to the extent that I'm not going to take a guess one way or the other. But if I did, yeah, I'm going to go in that direction just because you have a coach who just makes way too much money, has too great of a job, too great of a program, and all those things. And even if you want to backtrack Michigan 3 years and say they weren't doing so well and all of that, but still he's churning out 9 and 10 win football teams. That to put all that on the line for something that may or may not help you, I don't know.
Yeah, and honestly, if the coaching staff, didn't know that he was going to these extremes, I feel this is if they didn't know. I feel bad for the coaching staff. I feel bad for the players. I just feel bad for everyone involved because they're probably feeling like, dang, we're going to be labeled as cheaters. We're going to, maybe we weren't maybe I don't think they're thinking this, but it's like maybe we weren't as good as they, we really were. I don't think they're even thinking that, but
Well,
it's just those things cross their mind.
Yeah, the connection that needs to be figured out is, let's say he did act alone. Well, he's still getting his information that's been under the guise of espionage to the rest of the coaches to act upon.
Yeah, no doubt. And
used,
I'm not debating that.
But
I'm not debating that.
Yes. Looking at this from the standpoint of Michigan being as clean as they possibly can at this point, let's take that, is that he acted alone, that he gave information to coordinators, and they thought it was under the rules, and it was gotten in a completely above the board manner. That's
it's still cheating.
To this being but it's still going to be something that they're going to have to face, and the lack of institutional controls, the term that keeps coming back to me, because we've seen this in other cases where people in certain areas of the athletic department acted in a rogue way, but it was still brought to the responsibility of the powers that be.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm gonna talk about this institutional control thing. I know it's a rule, and we talk about, we can't talk about how we don't agree with rules, but like, how are they supposed to know? Let me ask you this: how are they supposed to know what he was doing? Let's say they didn't know. How are they supposed to know what he's doing in his what's clearly his off time? Are they supposed to have someone keep tabs on him 24/7? Like, I don't understand. You know what I'm saying?
Well, if my kid's out running around and he's 16 years old out on the streets doing stupid things, well, it's still my responsibility.
I understand that. I just think that, like, when we talk about a head coach absolves the same punishment as the culprit, we're talking about a person that this was all done off campus in his off time. If he did this alone, most of it was done obviously, electronically, having people go places on his phone. And then if he went to this Friday night game, coaches don't stay at the hotel. he could have just drove up there. It's Michigan State. Could have just drove up there for the night game, came back that night,
Sure.
and then I'm just like my problem with that rule is like, how are they supposed to know in that situation?
They're not necessarily supposed to know, but it's just like when one of the players runs amok. You can't keep track of 105 players and everything that they're doing, but that doesn't mean they're not going to skip class, do drugs, deal drugs, have handguns that they shouldn't have, do all the things that they do, but you still have to pay the consequences. Now, to your point, it would be even more damning if they could find that he went to a game that there was no way that he could have gotten to without somebody knowing. You're right. Michigan State played this game against Central Michigan on a Friday night. He could have, what's the drive, like 90 minutes or whatever it is?
It's like,
yeah, it's nothing. So yeah, he could have gone to that game by himself with nobody else knowing what he was doing and still made it back to Michigan's game on Saturday.
yeah. So I guess, like, using your analogy with the kid gets in trouble at the school. In that situation, guess who gets in trouble? The school or the kid. The school don't get in trouble for that. You punish the kid, whatever punishment he gets, It doesn't also go on to the school. So, like, in this situation, because of this rule, if he did this by himself, he's doing all these things, and then it gets caught up, it gets found out, they suspend him. But then we're gonna put those actions back. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, it's
okay. If there is a way of knowing that he acted completely alone, there is still an issue with Michigan getting information that was
that's true. I'm not disagreeing with that
received,
part.
against the rules. But yeah, it's a completely different level than if they're in on it. Those are just, the penalties should be completely different. Then I'm going to slap on the wrist.
100%. And it's part of the reason why I think Michigan is trying to extend Harbaugh right now, trying to make him the highest paid coach still, because they have to believe that, right? Because if they believe that they had any knowledge, there's no way they do that. Would you agree?
Yeah, because they're doing their own internal investigation, and they've been through these things with other departments and all sorts of things where they should know how to do investigations, and they maybe can't know for sure, but they probably have a pretty good grasp on exactly how serious this is one way or the other and who they can believe, and if Harbaugh knew or if he didn't know. I got to think that they have a pretty good grasp on how
severe it is.
this is at and how severe it is. Yes.
So that would lead me to believe that they want to make him, if they want to accelerate it, that's the report, and make him the highest paid coach in the Big Ten. They must have something that tells them that this dude acted alone. Because if they had anything that said otherwise, there's no way they do that deal still and try to even accelerate it, in my mind.
Well, I'm going to go the unorthodox path just to say it, in that they also could think, well, if we give him a contract extension, that looks good to the public. That makes us look good, that we're confident that nothing went wrong here, that he was not involved. But if he was involved and that's proven, then we're off the hook for this contract anyway, because his misconduct clause is going to put us.
Yeah, that's a good standpoint. They could be currently confident that he wasn't involved, but leave a clause in there that if something does happen to come out, that there's an out.
Yeah,
that's a fair point. That's a fair point. I don't got too much else, man. I'm just can't wait to get back to some football with my squad. See what the Big Ten chooses to do, and we'll see how much it really changed the games coming up here, and how stupid of a decision it was to even cheat in the first place. So we'll see, man.
I also got to say, since we just reviewed Michigan's schedule for 2024, and I see USC on there at the Big House, it'll make me curious to see what kind of interactions you have with our guy Tim leading up to that game.
You know what, man? I gotta wait for that because I don't even know where this program is going to be at next year.
Sure.
At,
Well, sure.
at this
Yeah.
current, you know. So, all right, man, you have a good one.
All right. Appreciate it, man. My gut tells me, and my gut has many times been right and several times been wrong. My gut tells me that this isn't going to be some back-breaking set of penalties against Michigan. I think this is going to be institutional control, fines, and scholarships or official visits limited, things connected to recruiting, because past money, that's where you hit a program first and foremost, is you go the recruiting route. And then I'm trying to think of the term. It's not probation, but it's like a probationary period where probation means, of course, there is maybe penalties toward postseason play or something like that. But I don't see that. I see more that the NCAA basically holds your hand and wants further reports and accountability for the next 2 years or whatever the time frame. But we shall see. That doesn't mean I have any kind of great confidence in predicting that. I'm just saying that's where I see this leaning. All right, let's get back to it. We got our guy Jackson on the line. Jackson, what's going on, man?
Oh, it's going pretty good, Mark. How's it going with you, man?
I'm doing well.
I will say I'm excited about the 2024 Big Ten schedule releasing, but there was something that caught my eye today, and this has to do with the Michigan investigation. This was something that I found from Clay Travis today, and I wanted to see what you thought of it.
Sure.
He says, conspiracy theory, the reason ESPN is going after Michigan so aggressively is because ESPN no longer has any Big Ten rights and they want to undercut the Big Ten's brand value as a result. You buy it. I don't think they do this. If they had Big Ten games, debate, discuss. And then he also says in the second part of the tweet, bots took away the entire Big Ten and the four biggest brands on the West Coast. ESPN is furious about that. Definitely interesting that the on-air hit seems to have been ordered on Michigan football. What do you think about that?
Okay. What I think about it is that we weren't too far into this investigation that crossed my mind. Yes. There has never been this much of a split in television rights in the history of major college football. There has always been a crossover of all these leagues and conferences playing on all the various networks that are involved in college football. But this is the first time ESPN, and before that ABC, which is obviously the same company right now and has been for 20 plus years, has had no association with the Big Ten. And the Big Ten now has an argument for being the most powerful conference in college football and no connection to ESPN. So yeah, that crossed my mind, but without any evidence or knowing that was the incentive, I'm not going to make that statement. Like Clay Travis or anybody else can throw out theories. I tend to not throw out theories just because it makes sense, but there is absolutely no evidence. Now, let's also understand that ESPN also just wants clicks on its website, and they want to be perceived as the front runner of anything that involves sports, especially college football. They want to be at the forefront, and they want to have the reputation that we reported it first, we reported it best, we've got the best information, we've got the inside information. And again, it's all about clicks, and clicks equal money and power. And so, we will see when the next time there is a big time scandal that shows up outside the Big Ten and how ESPN treats that.
Yeah, that is for sure. I came up with a list of the Big Ten schools that still have a non-conference opening. I looked on FBS schedules for 2024.
Oh, nice.
Illinois, Northwestern, and Washington. feels weird saying Washington is a Big Ten team still for some reason.
Illinois, Northwestern, and Washington still have non-conference openings, and of
They
course,
only have
I'm
they
sorry,
only
what
have
was I
one.
saying? They all have
They
one.
only have one.
Yes, they all have non-conference openings. And of course, we know that Ohio State and Washington, I believe it was initiated by Ohio State, canceled the Washington series for 2024 and 25. I'm guessing that there was something known at the time that, hey, they're going to be in this league. However, you could probably come up with a game for me. Baylor and somebody in the Big 12, in the new Big 12, it's Utah because they played this year. The second half of that home and home series is going to be with Utah, of course, joining the Big 12, but they have decided that that's going to be a non-conference game next season. So Ohio State could have done something like that, but they chose not to.
Yeah, when I saw that Ohio State Washington canceled the home and home series, I was just unhappy about it. But then when I saw Washington joining the Big Ten, I was like, that makes sense.
That's what happened. Just like Georgia and Oklahoma. Now, let me ask you this, and I don't know if you remember in seeing these schedules. Do either Illinois, Northwestern, or Washington play a Power 5 team?
Illinois plays Kansas. I know that.
Their second home and home.
Yeah, Washington does not have a Power 5, but Washington State, we don't know what their schedule's looking like for 2024, so we might see the Apple Cup come back for another few years. Great. And I'm looking at Northwestern's schedule. They have Duke already. So we don't know if they're going to go with a second Power 5 or if they're going to go into an FCS school.
What is it with Duke and Northwestern? Northwestern plays Duke more often than they play any team in the Big Ten Eastern Division. They've played them like 8 years in a row. They have.
Maybe they should have a rivalry game. It feels like the Vanderbilt Wake Forest games from back in the day. I mean, it was like they played each other so much. I used to think of it as like a rivalry game.
So we already know about the non-conference rivalries between the SEC and the ACC that get played every year. That all makes sense. Indiana and Kentucky used to play every year as well. They had that kind of series going. But Duke and Northwestern, they play every year.
Oh, man. I'll tell you, you and I both know a good buddy of ours, Jeffrey. He's pretty happy about Indiana, Kentucky coming back a year or so from now in basketball. Oh, man, he's playing the Peanuts music over that. But, yeah, I'm just curious to see what happens. I am not surprised to see Oregon-Washington being on rivalry week, as I saw on the updates today.
Okay, got you. So if we go down to the Oregon schedule, okay, gotcha. So the Big Ten doing the smart thing and making that the rivalry, which it is.
I wonder if I'm thinking it's likely going to be the NBC night game next year. Because, I mean, there's no way Big Noon Kickoff's giving up Michigan, Ohio State.
No.
Not happening.
No.
So, and I don't know what's happening with Nebraska, Iowa. Now, I know it's on CBS.
And Washington, and not to interrupt you, Washington and Oregon are not playing at 9 o'clock in the morning.
No. They're not going to do that. So, there we go. I don't know where Nebraska, Iowa will be on next year. I know it's on CBS this year. I just don't know if it's going to be on CBS or NBC next year.
Yeah, I don't know that we really need to be guessing TV networks a year in advance. That's not really that consequential. So
true.
Well, anything else, Jackson?
I was curious about Michigan State's back end of the schedule, their November schedule.
Okay.
Now, depending on the right coach that they get this offseason, They could probably pull off some easy wins. Oop, there they are. Indiana, Illinois, Purdue. I still get a little. I got questions about Michigan State Rutgers being on rivalry week, but I understand why it has to be.
Yeah, I don't think that it really matters. I just don't see where there's any natural way for the Big Ten to go in any particular direction with those schools. If anything, for the last 9 years, most of those years, they've had Maryland and Rutgers play the final weekend of the season. And of course, it's been Penn State and Michigan State have played their, whatever they call that thing, the land grant trophy game. But they broke up Michigan State and Penn State. So that's done. That doesn't mean the trophy's gone, but that's done as a every season game, protected game. So I would think that they would have gone Maryland Rutgers as a final weekend game, and then you have nowhere to put Michigan State. They just kind of randomly place somebody. If you really look at it, if you look at the final weekend of the season, okay, you got Ohio State, Michigan, you've got Indiana, Purdue, you've got Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Nebraska, USC, UCLA, Washington, Oregon, Northwestern, Illinois. Who do we have left? We only have Michigan State, Penn State, Maryland, Rutgers.
Yeah.
And if Penn State and Michigan State no longer have a protected rivalry, then yeah, they're kind of caught up in either playing Rutgers or Penn State every year, or Maryland.
You think one of these years they'll try to have like a Michigan State UCLA game on an even number year one of these years?
I'm not understanding your question. Why?
Well, because USC plays Notre Dame on rivalry week in the even number years, and the odd number years they always play in October.
They need, yeah. So let's look at USC.
Oh, they got a tough schedule
they're
right
obviously
there.
playing at home against Notre Dame this past. So yeah, they're playing Notre Dame on the 30th. So who's UCLA playing?
Fresno State on November 30th.
Okay.
To tell you the truth, that surprised me when they scheduled a game with Fresno State for rivalry week. I thought the Big Ten was going to try to plan something like Michigan State, UCLA, or Penn State, UCLA for rivalry week.
Yeah, so they got a very odd situation there with USC every other year not being available. And then they've got these 4 teams out of the East Division that they have not made a protected rivalry with to play on that weekend.
Yeah. I just wish but they'll probably figure it out eventually.
Well, since USC is playing outside of the conference, though, on every other year on the last weekend of the season, somebody else has to play outside the conference.
Yeah.
They have an odd number of teams.
Maybe Penn State could go back to playing Pittsburgh every year. Make that the rivalry week game.
Well, it wouldn't be every year. It would have to be every other year.
Yeah. That's what it would probably have to be for the time being. But thank you for having me on, Mark. And it's fun talking to you as always, man.
Jackson, we appreciate you, man. You're great. We appreciate all your help and support. And you have a great night.
You too, man.
We will keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. Once again, everyone, Amazon links in the description section of the videos. Just grab it, put it somewhere where you will not forget it. You remember that Amazon link when you jump on Amazon. It's the same shopping experience. And if anybody determines anything different, let me know. Okay, that's our deal. Use the Amazon link. And if there's any kind of issues with it for any other reason, then obviously you just use the link that you always use. And then you tell me, hit me up at MarkRogersTV at Gmail about anything. Not about anything, because then I got a bunch of crazies contacting me about stupid things, but anything that's legitimate. Let's say that. We got Dr. Buckeye on the line wearing his shades. Is this like we've extended
Well,
Halloween?
yeah, I had a college football sideline to get to, Mark. I left my mustache over there on the table. So, I've got to make the rounds, get good film, get some taping done.
Yes.
Do you like the shades?
I
I'm
like
just
the
saying.
shades.
Thank you.
How does
Thank you,
the
buddy.
Central Michigan gear look on you?
Yeah, well, I've got some of that. Don't say anything, Mark. Try to keep this under wraps. I've got to. I'm lying low right now. I'm very incognito here.
This is something else, isn't it?
Isn't it? It just keeps getting crazier and crazier and crazier. And what I find interesting is, I as I told you before, I think the NCAA just delays this, and I don't think we would see any action until after the season. But the Big Ten could set a precedent here, Mark. They really could. And I haven't gotten a chance to hear your show up until just here the last few minutes. I mean, do you think the new commissioner, Mr. Petiti here, might be likely to try and make a statement?
Well, I don't have enough knowledge of the process, but I know this more so than I knew a couple hours ago, although it wouldn't have been difficult to determine that, this is not the NFL. So the commissioner does not have all this unwielding power to do whatever's at his disposal. You've got, the owners, or the chancellors and the presidents act like
Right.
in the position of NFL owners. So they need a lot of cooperation. This goes through a whole big process. It's not Tony Petit. Now, of course, he can get it really initiated and brought in front of these folks, but it's not like he can just lay down a ruling by himself.
Well, I mean, what I wonder here, I mean, you got a lot of, I mean, you've heard about the conversation, right, Mark, and how hot it got, and
Yes.
I mean,
we were going through all that at the
yeah, no, well,
beginning. Yes.
pardon me, I got here late, as I mentioned, a
No,
minute
no,
ago.
no issues.
So,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, this thing's getting pretty heated, and you can go ahead and single out Ryan Day all you want, TTUN fans. I think that's a bunch of BS. By the way, I don't know. Very interesting tape on the Zach Smith show today
Yeah.
of an assistant up there who got caught. Did you see what he got caught doing?
No. Do I really want to hear this?
You don't want to know. You don't want to know.
Okay. Was this on video?
This is on video. Watch the Zach Smith show
So
today.
we're not talking about somebody getting caught doing anything against NCAA. We're talking about something embarrassing.
This is embarrassing on like level 1,000. Let's put it this way. Think Chris Hansen.
Okay.
Do you remember the guy that used to work on NBC and to catch a predator type thing?
Yes.
Okay. Think that, Mark. Think
So
that.
we're not talking about anything illegal.
No. This is very bad.
Okay.
This is a guy. Just watch the clip if you get a chance on the Zach Smith show today that he showed of this guy getting caught, and you're gonna find it pretty bad. In fact, really bad.
So when you say this guy, we don't know which assistant.
Well, I mean, take a look at it yourself. I think this guy might have some issues, by the way, Mark. Please go ahead and pull it up if you can.
Okay, I will.
And you tell me what you think of what's going on up there.
Okay.
And by the way, I personally think this whole situation, and I like I said, I think the Big Ten could set a precedent here, but I understand that there are dollars at play. I mean, the casual, lazy answer is this all comes back to the money. This all comes back to the dollars. And I know people are going to say that, and that's what moves the needle, and I get it. But I mean, when you have this many coaches out there being this outspoken, and it's not just Ryan Day. You can't just single out Ryan Day and he's the only one that's doing this. He's not the only coach that's upset. There was one coach that left that call and wanted no part of it. And guess who that was, Mark?
Well, of course, there was one coach. That coach had to leave
Well, of course, I know.
so the other ones could discuss it.
Yeah, he had to go run and hide, Mark. He had to brush up his resume to go look for that NFL job. That's what he had to go do.
Yeah, but you're talking about the Big Ten having incentive, the money incentive. I get that. They don't want one of their premier schools being dragged through the mud. However, don't you think that if the Big Ten was 99.9% sure that things were really bad, really severe, to the point where, hey, this is not going to end well for Michigan, why would the Big Ten want to play out a season, defraud its championship and a possible college football playoff bid and championship, and not intervene, and so it can clean up this season, eliminate Michigan, and play its championship honestly, if they are that sure?
Well, first of all, I think that you have to have all these coaches, and you have what I'm wondering is this. Are they just waiting for the FBI and the NCAA, and are they just going to pull back and say, you know what, let's let the FBI, let's let the NCAA, let's let all this play out, okay? Or are we going to be proactive? Now, the other question is, what have they done this year that have affected football games?
Yeah, well, the first thing that you just mentioned, David, is why the Big Ten is in a tough spot, because they don't want to. So they know that 13 schools, football coaches are enraged, and they know that Michigan's a huge brand.
Right.
And they don't want to sever their relationship with either, not to sever it, but make it difficult. So yes, they want the NCAA to come down with the hammer and to, if that's where it needs to, this needs to result. Of course, they want the NCAA/the FBI to be the bad cop and to wield the decision and the penalties.
Yeah. I mean, I personally think that this thing, I mean, I just thought that, when you have this much of an uproar within the conference, and I don't know the full details of the Big Ten's investigation and what they're doing, and if that goes along with what the NCAA is doing, or what what the feds are doing here, Mark, or what. But man, I would think maybe they do just delay. But you've got a new commissioner here, and I don't know what your view is of him, Mark, and for him to be a lot different than Kevin Warren or a lot different than Jim Delaney, because that's what I wonder. How a Delaney would have done with this. I think we already got a chance to see how Warren dealt with the COVID situation. It was awful. But, I mean, this is something that has affected outcomes of football games, Mark. This is a pretty big effing deal. Pardon my Swahili.
You are allowed. So we don't know if it's changed the results of football games, but that to me doesn't matter, because we will never know. But we know that there's cheating, and that's the reason why you cheat, is to change the results of the games. Again, this is the way I would handle it, and this is very simple. I'm not talking about all the complicated matters of how to do it, but my judgment as a president that had influence, or the commissioner in the Big Ten, would be, if we are almost 100% certain that Michigan has, this is a institutional issue, Harbaugh, AD, whomever, enough that this has tainted, it already has tainted the games, but I mean, it's tainted the games with the direction of Harbaugh and higher level coaches.
But what's been Harbaugh's answer to all this, Mark?
He's denied it.
Well, no. He's saying to let the investigation run our course. And then, you've got a lot of these people out there speaking like this guy is a lone wolfer too. that this guy, and we know, I mean, how can he be a lone wolfer when he's taking pictures with all your football players and, they they admit that they were compensating the guy and he was part of the program.
Well, the string or thread of innocence or potential innocence is that there's all sorts of people that act in some kind of rogue way, illegally or otherwise, within a company where it's unknown by anybody else. Now, I don't really believe that, but it is yet to be proved, or we have yet to find out that it's been proven that, and that's what everyone's waiting for. What everyone's waiting for is, did Harbaugh know of this, approve of this, initiate this? That's the missing piece in all this.
Well, of course he's going to deny Mark. I mean, he's going to say this guy was a lone wolfer. He was acting alone. I mean, first of all, what did I tell you before, Mark? I didn't know, or I wasn't aware is not an answer. I mean, how can that be an answer? I mean, they're not paying you millions of dollars, pal. This is your baby. You are the owner. You are the president. You are the general manager, and you are the head coach of that program. You are supposed to be all knowing if we're going to compensate you at that level and give you that kind of a contract. Period.
Yeah, I'm not saying any of that.
Okay.
What's
wrong with my analysis?
It doesn't matter what Harbaugh says. It matters if they can come up with evidence to connect him to having knowledge, whether that's on file on hard drives or text messages or whatever, that they can direct. Now I'm talking about the very most severe situation and harshest penalties and all of that this was an operation starting from the top, it doesn't matter what Harbaugh has to say. They have to prove that they can connect him in some way. Now, if they can't prove that, then there's still violations there that have to be dealt with. And yes, he's supposed to have knowledge of all of that. It's not an excuse not to have knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, one would think that that's why they put these college football coaches on this pedestal, give them this kind of compensation, give them this kind of power, because I don't know, maybe you've heard this line: with great power and great compensation comes great responsibility.
That's
I
right.
don't know, that used to be like a thing.
But with all of that, there is a difference between, we know that Jim Harbaugh knew of this, initiated it, approved of it, whatever, versus we can't make that connection. There are still going to be harsh penalties to some degree in this latter case, but if that is not proven, then that's a whole different level of enforcement and penalties.
Well, it's going to be fun to kick his ass on November 25th and send him packing, Mark, when that's going to be his last game as coach, because that's what it's going to be about. We can send him off to the NFL, and you know what? He can go ahead and pack his parachute now and get ready to pack his bags and get out of Ann Arbor.
If all of this turns out to be true in regards to his involvement, again, if he's involved in it, then to me, he initiated it. Because what coach, it really doesn't matter whether he initiated it or not, or just approved it, and some other Connor Stallions came up with this brilliant idea and Harbaugh said, yeah, that sounds great, go do that. Regardless, it doesn't matter. But I will say, and I know you're on your tirade about Harbaugh and what an awful human being he is. I don't know the man. I never vouch for anybody that I don't know personally. So, and I have to know them rather well. So I've never vouched for him in any way as a human being, but he has taken certain stands on certain topics that I've thought, okay, well, I agree with that. And I fully endorse and support his courage in stepping out on an issue and on the right side of an issue. So I'm actually disappointed that he's involved in unscrupulous activity.
I'm not exactly just a broken clock's right twice a day, Mark. You know, and by the way, I tried to listen to the Steve Dace podcast this week, and I nearly wanted to vomit. By the way, you talk about a guy that is just hunkered down. And by the way, when you come on, you guys weren't even going to talk about that this week, were you? It was, basically, we've talked this out. We've gone over this ground before. I noticed he didn't want to cover that ground other than give his little soliloquy that, we're the team up north and we're just going to keep kicking ass. And, Mr. Tough Guy, Matt Foley over there, huh?
Well, you have to understand, David, that when I tape the segment with Steve every week, I don't know what he's talked about.
Yeah.
He's recorded whatever he's recorded, and then he just fires whatever topics and questions at me.
Okay.
So I don't know at that point, and then I see it, and I know what he's talked about, and then we go from there, and I talk football or whatever he wants to talk about.
Have we heard anything from the Big Ten about timeline on this, Mark, when they might come to some kind of a decision or render some kind of a decision? Or
I went through an article that was posted on The Athletic and then also another one on ESPN that basically outlined, and I thought very well, the possible conclusions, meaning the 4 paths of conclusion. Either the 2 parties, meaning Michigan and the NCAA, they agree on this is what we did. Yes, we admit to this, and the punishment. Or there's a disagreement between, okay, we agree that we did X, Y, and Z, but we do not agree with the punishment. And then, from all the way to it being a full-flung court battle that could ensue. So the most likely of those, and I'm forgetting the third, is that it's going to take over a year. Like the NCAA every year releases an infractions report that has, the full rundown of all these cases that they've gone through, and it also has a time frame of each one. And I guess the average one that can be in some way likened to this takes a year.
Well, that's why I said from the get-go, the first conversation we had, I thought this would be prolonged and it wouldn't be acted upon until after the season's over. Because you tell me the last case where the NCAA ruled on something in mid-season and implemented those, infractions in the middle of the season to punish a football team going forward during the season that they're playing in.
Wow.
Tell me the last time. I've never seen that happen. So for them,
No.
that's why I'd said that the only one that could really bring down the iron fist, it would be more likely to be the Big Ten, I would think, than it would be the NCAA. That's why, they know that they just got to ride out the storm here. And that, if they have to give all this back in a year or two, that, hey, you watch the games, we played the games, even though we cheated to win games, and we got to give all this back, we had our fun ride, and such was the case. But, their fun ride's going to end on November 25th when they get their ass kicked. So that's what it's all about. You notice, TTUN fans, I'm not ducking you. I'm not saying that we're not going to win. I want to play the game.
Well, David, are you in any way confusing your hatred for Michigan and your vitriol against this certain situation with your judgment of who's going to play a better football game on November 25th?
No, I'm confident we're going to win, Mark.
Okay.
There you go. I know that they've got their own confidence. Believe you me, I've been listening to them for a long period of time, Mark, and I'm confident we're going to win.
That would take care of a lot, for sure. What would take care of a lot? Like if we want a true champion, and we want a true champion in the Big Ten advancing to the college football playoff, Ohio State can take care of that. And does Michigan possibly get a bid? With their crappy schedule, and if other teams can hold the line, i.e., let's say your Washington Huskies and Florida State, and take up too many spots, then Michigan loses to Ohio State in their history, and that takes care of this issue. And of course I would love that. I'm an Ohio State fan. But even if I wasn't, let's say Penn State was in this situation against Michigan, I'd pull for Penn State because I want a clean championship and playoff.
Hey, TTUN fans, you're not going to hang me on I don't want the game not to be played, or I'm one of those fans that's running away from the game, or whatever you've been posting out there. I want the game to be played so that we can kick your ass on the field. So
Erica says that after watching Ohio State against Wisconsin, she's not convinced that Ohio State beats Michigan because they should have been more dominating against the Badgers.
They left some points on the board. I'm not saying that they didn't lead, but they won by 2 touchdowns on the road. I mean,
I'm not that all concerned about that effort. Sure, they've certainly blasted Wisconsin in the past, but I'm not that concerned about their performance. I am more and more confident in Ohio State's team every week.
I think that what they've said in the past, Klatt made a very good point.
Yeah.
That this team being more structured around defense is a better path than the paths that they've taken in the past that have been completely offensive teams, Mark.
Well, I'll make this statement, and maybe I'm putting my foot in my mouth because there's a long way to go. They've only played 8 games, and the most important games are still to come. But do you remember what I predicted this season and why I predicted it?
Yes.
I said Ohio State is not even close to being the best team in the country on September 1st. But I am going to predict that Kyle McCord is going to get better and better, that this defense is going to be so much better with an adjusted scheme and with being in Jim Knowles' defense, and that it's pretty much thus far coming along the way I forecasted it.
Well, as I said, I thought the defense would take a big jump this year. I believe it has. I mean, to say it's not a lot better than it was last year when they were giving up 30 points to bad football teams last year would be an ignorant statement. That it would just be an Ohio State hater that would be making that statement. I mean, those would be Team Up North football fans.
Yes, like Steven here.
Yes, of course.
Ohio State is not winning anything with Honda McCord.
Listen, were you confident? I asked them if they were confident 2 years ago that they were going to win with Cade McNamara at quarterback.
Yeah.
And by the way, there have been plenty of middle-of-the-road college quarterbacks that have won national championships, Mark. I remember Ohio State losing to 2 of them named Chris Leak and Matt Flynn, who weren't exactly, going to be in the College Football Hall of Fame anytime soon.
Jay Coker
in 2015 for Alabama. The McElroys and the McCarrons of the world.
I believe, and it's close, it's debatable, but I believe that Kyle McCord's a better quarterback than Cade McNamara.
Oh, I firmly believe that. But I was using it to illustrate a weak quarterback that has made the playoff and won the conference.
Yeah. I'm making that statement for all to hear in the chat that Kyle McCord's a better quarterback than Cade McNamara.
Right, and plus he's got better offensive weapons than Cade McNamara had 2 years ago too.
Oh yeah.
That's not even close. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all shakes out, Mark.
It is, and I would love it to shake out before November 25th, but we are only weeks away, so I want a ruling. I want all the facts to be out there and a ruling, and that ruling to be just and fair, and the determination to be justified, and whatever that is, that's what I want.
You think the Team Up North fans want that ruling to come before November 25th, Mark, or you think they just assume that come in like February or March or something like that?
Yes, we both know what the answer to that is.
Oh, I think we do.
Yeah. Yes.
So, and that's a fair statement.
It's going to be fascinating. Not just this. I think this college football season is more fascinating than others because I do not see a great team, and I see Ohio State and Michigan. I see Florida State, Georgia, Alabama, Texas. I'm not really sold on Oklahoma being a serious contender in any way, but I see Oregon and Washington. See a lot of teams that, until it's proven otherwise, will be highly competitive against each other.
Are you so you are convinced Oregon beats Washington in that rematch and Texas beats Oklahoma in that rematch?
Well, I'm not convinced of it, but I do think Oregon's better than Washington, and I certainly believe that Texas is better than Oklahoma.
Okay. Yeah, I found your interesting pick that if Texas does beat a 12 and or 11-1 Alabama and an 11-1 Oklahoma, you would still take a one-loss Oregon because of the strength of the pack. Well, they would have a victory over an undefeated Washington, which would be huge, let's say.
Yeah, Oregon would end in that scenario. Texas would have a win against Bama
Hmm.
and a win against Oklahoma and a loss against Oklahoma. And Oregon's in that scenario has wins over Washington, Oregon State, USC, I believe Arizona, Utah.
Right.
I don't know if they're playing UCLA. Yeah, the Big 12 is just, it's not that good.
Yeah, the drop off after those top
Yeah.
two teams is really severe.
We
So
think
I mean,
they are. We think it is.
right.
Kansas State's playing Texas this Saturday. You're
Yeah,
you're you're assuming that this is going to be the Big 12 championship game.
yeah. I mean, I was wondering if Oklahoma was a little bit counterfeit for a while, you know. And I know they won the game against Texas, although I thought Texas may have kind of given that game away in as much as Oklahoma won. And I know we got to give Oklahoma a lot of credit for winning that game at the end, but I just thought in a way that Texas brought their C game. So
Well, I do think I don't want to say that. I just believe that Texas is a better team. They've got better personnel, and they've proven it multiple times against other competition where Oklahoma, that's their gold standard game. And since then, they had a week off to celebrate and come down from that high against Texas. They had a bye week at a perfect place where they needed that bye week, and they still went out against UCF, who has been awful and barely won on a failed 2-point conversion with a minute left. And then this past week they go to Kansas and lose. And Jason Bean, he was so hot and cold in that game. He made a ton of plays that were phenomenal, but he also, the erratic Jason Bean, is also trying to gift wrap Oklahoma a win, and they
sure.
wouldn't take it. So they're not that good. They're a good team. They're a top
Yeah.
15 team in the country, but they're not that good.
Yeah, they're not a playoff team.
No.
I don't see that. No,
They're not. And that's why this Oklahoma State team, this is one of the better stories of the season. They are currently tied for first place there's a 5-way tie for first place right now in the Big 12.
Did you find it interesting they put Ole Miss at 10, Mark, or do you think that's a little high there?
No, that's where I've got them.
Oh, you've got them that high?
Exactly where I've got them.
I was wondering if that was a little bit high. Ole Miss and Penn State on a neutral field right now. Who wins?
Penn State.
Okay. Ole Miss Notre Dame on a neutral field right now. Who wins?
Ooh. That'd be a heck of a game. I'm going to go with the Irish.
Yeah, I actually think I think Notre Dame might be, like I said after we beat them, I said they'll go 10-2. And it looks pretty good that they can go 10-2. And that's a solid football team. And I was thinking to myself the other day, what if Notre Dame and Penn State played? Who would win? Now it sounds like you're confident Penn State would beat Notre Dame, but I think that
why
no?
do you take that? I just said Penn State was going to beat Ole Miss and Notre Dame was going to beat Ole Miss.
Maybe because of how defiant you said
Gotcha.
Penn State was going to beat Ole Miss as verse to Notre Dame beating Ole Miss.
Yeah, and I'm not confident of either one of those outcomes.
Okay.
But I think Notre Dame has played better against better teams than Penn State has. I'll say that. They played Ohio State better. They didn't play Louisville well, but they did for 3+ quarters. And they went to Duke and won, and they beat USC. Penn State doesn't have those kind of wins.
No, I mean, what's their best thing? Right, beating West Virginia and the Brian Ferentzes that is Iowa. I
Yeah.
mean, right. No, I hear you.
Now, Blue Wolverine, who is
Yes.
completely unbiased, is letting us
Yes,
know
I'm
that
sure
Ohio
you.
State has to get better. Michigan is already great. Now, let me alert everyone to this. Michigan is not proven to be anything, certainly not great. I'm not saying that they can't be great or they will not prove it, but beating Minnesota and Rutgers is not proving to me that they're great. You can't prove to be great when you don't play anyone.
So if Ohio State beats Rutgers more than 31-7 this week, which I believe they can, does that make Ohio State all of a sudden better if we're looking at like opponent or something like that? See, if Ohio State wins this week 24-7, they're going to equate some kind of an analysis. Conversely, if they won the game 38-7, then they would blow that off and say, well, we didn't play our best game that week, and they'll just do the verbal gymnastics to justify whatever at that particular period of time.
I would blow it off either way, unless
Yeah.
Ohio State mightily struggles.
Mm.
Then that's not going to prove anything to me, but it's going to be that's not a good look. That's a bad indicator, but it doesn't prove anything. Or if Ohio State, because Rutgers is now a capable football team, we can
No, they're not bad.
put the Rutgers jokes in the closet for now, for this season at least. And they're a capable football team. They're a decent Big Ten football team that'll probably go 4-5 in the conference and go 7-5 and go to a bowl game. So if Ohio State beats them like 52-3 or whatever, 42-3, then I think that's a bit of a statement.
Are we saying that Schiano should get some votes for Coach of the Year in the Big Ten?
Coach of the Year in the Big Ten. Yes, it's him right now.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I was thinking about that. If he gets him to even like an 8-4,
it's going to be tough for him to get to 8-4.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Your 7-5 is probably more realistic.
They've got Ohio State, Penn State, Iowa on the road.
Yeah,
Maryland. Those are their 4 left.
Yeah, at best is probably one of them. Boy, the trajectory of the Fighting Mike Loxleys, boy, after that Ohio State loss.
They're not as good as some people thought.
Somebody could take the 8.5 this weekend, Mark. Early, help you make some coin there.
Penn State and Maryland?
Yeah.
Take the 8.5 with Maryland?
No. Take Penn State this weekend.
Yeah, to cover.
They're going to boat race them.
Yeah, I think that they're going to be focused this week.
Yeah. All right, Mark, you coming back Friday?
I believe so.
Okay. Well, we got some more games to talk about that Saturday. Want to get into that Alabama LSU tilt. I think LSU is dangerous, Mark. I think they're dangerous.
Yeah, they are dangerous, but Alabama's going to win.
I'm going to give you some interesting analysis on that game. We're going to have to hash that out on Friday.
We will do it.
All right, Mark. You take care of yourself.
Thanks,
By the
Gabe.
way, the Buckeyes don't duck football games, unlike other football programs. Team Up North, C2020.
Okay.
Go Bucks.
All right. Before we get to more calls, nobody watched these videos, and they're great videos, especially the conversation we had with Matt Moscona. If you don't know who that is, he is one of the best radio guys in the country, bar none. And he's on ESPN Radio Baton Rouge, New Orleans. And we did an LSU talk this week. It's on the main channel. And it's just a mystery to me when I post videos because they some take off, others nobody watches. They're all over the place. We've got a hot and cold outfit here at the Voice of College Football. I will say that. I am the who did we just talk about being hot and cold? I don't want to liken myself to the Jason Bean of YouTube channels, but my goodness. And I often wonder, and this makes me very lack a lot of confidence in terms of the whole YouTube platform and people that watch videos, because as has been the case for years here, some of the best videos we do nobody watches, and some of the easiest, I don't want to call them garbage videos, because of course we would never produce or post any garbage here at the Voice of College Football, but some of it just, yeah. So it never makes any sense to me. But Matt Moscona, ESPN Radio, was on talking LSU. Yeah. I may just do a premiere and just play that video. That's what I'm gonna start doing. We started to do that. When was that? About 6 months ago. We did these power blocks, and I just lined up videos to play. I just edited together like 8 hours of videos and just played them. Maybe I'll shove it down your throats that way. That's what we'll do, because we did some previews this week. Oklahoma State Bedlam preview. That was a good one. Alabama, LSU, and a few others. We talked Rutgers football with a Rutgers writer today. That's posted over on the Ohio State channel as well. Also want to remind everyone that if you're sick of listening to me, we've got the USC call-in show going on right now on the USC channel. And then also we've got the Clemson all-in show going on the Clemson channel right now. So check those out. Let's pick off these super chats. Thank you so much. Vaughn, who says, as a Michigan fan, I embrace our new villain role. Just kidding. During the dark years, I longed for Michigan to cheat. I got what I wished for, I guess. Michigan fans, I feel for you. You have no involvement in this. It's just your team. It is just your team. Brian, thank you so much for the contribution. He's a recruiting intern and was fired immediately months ago. What? Am I missing something there? Are we talking about Connor Stallions? Are we talking about somebody else? Oh, we're talking about maybe we're talking about, yes, maybe we're talking about the assistant that David was talking about that was probably let go because of those transgressions. Okay. Yeah, those kind of things could happen anywhere. You know, you can always hire loose cannons, no doubt. Blue Wolverine says the talk is Ohio State has to improve before the game. Michigan is already great. Don't sound too confident. All right. We appreciate that. We've got Michigan Man Clark's joining us. Michigan Man Clark, how are you?
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
I am doing just fine. What's a good word?
Oh, man, I wish there was some good word after this newest little leak of Connor Stallions on the Central Michigan sideline. I wanted to say first, Michigan fans, we there's a lot of different types of Ohio State fans, but when you have one that addresses Michigan as that team up north, you kind of know what you got then. You know what you're dealing with. So, but it's all good fun. I love it.
It's a pretty standard deal. I don't know how much you've been around Ohio State, Michigan in terms of the rivalry in the series, but that's been going on for decades.
Oh, since the Woody Hayes days. Yeah. But not a lot of people do it. My father-in-law is a diehard Ohio State fan. I don't even know if I've ever heard him. Yeah, Thanksgiving can get kind of complicated.
If you've noticed, Urban Meyer, even though he's on Fox now, never says Michigan.
Yeah, he does that too. Yeah, and he's another one that crosses out the M's on. I think he revised that. But it's all good fun and games, though. Honestly, one thing I wanted to say is the whole deal with Connor Stallions, and I won't be long, but I just wanted to mention, a lot of us are saying that, with this new leak of him dressed up as, a Central Michigan assistant, yeah, it's not been confirmed yet, but I mean, even we know that's him. I mean, that's him. It looks just like him. Apparently there's some other evidence that just hasn't surfaced yet that points him in that direction, like being in that vicinity during that time period. That's definitely him. So for us right now, so a rule has clearly been broken now. If they can find proof, there's no way out of it, because you're not supposed to have a staff for recruiting. He's not recruiting, but scouting games. He is a staffer at a game scouting. A lot of people are saying, that just kind of proves that he was acting rogue, and it could be. But I want to ask you, how in the world could anybody do that? How could, I mean, you have to have some connections. Now, I know it's Central Michigan. It's not Notre Dame. It's not one of the big league teams, but still, like, you can't just know somebody and be able to get on the sidelines like that with
Sure
full.
about that?
Well,
I know that it sounds like that should be the case, and I know that security is more stringent as we just go forward. It's certainly, more stringent than it would have been 20 years ago or 50 years ago, and certainly 9/11 had something to do with that as well. But I was telling the story when that was brought up with our first caller that I know when I worked at ESPN, we had ESPN IDs that we needed for certain, entry into the building and different things like that, and to go certain places, go to Disney and all this other business. But I know of people that I worked with that used their ESPN IDs to get into sporting events that they didn't have any pass, but they would flash an ESPN ID and a security guard would just figure they're working.
But see, that's nuts to me because Connor Stalions, obviously, I mean, he was never even a really big name on, I mean, a lot of Michigan fans didn't even know who he was. Probably 90% of us didn't when all this came about. So it's not like it was Jesse Minter or somebody well known. I mean, it just seems like, now I could be totally wrong here. I'm just speculating, but it just seems like there's somebody beside, there had to have been some plugs that to be pulled to get him on that sideline. And I'll tell you this much too, Jim Harbaugh, in my opinion, if he did know about this the entire time, I think the best thing he could do, this is just my personal amateur opinion, is to just come clean about it, because it makes him look a lot worse. Because clearly, I mean, there's been a rule broken at this point. There's no way around it. And, the truth be told, I mean, if his mantra is going to continue to be, well, I didn't know about it, it's not my fault, I didn't know about it. And if he's going to keep denying and refusing to talk with NCAA, which I don't know if he is this time, but I know he has in the past, that's not really a way out, because it's his program. He's supposed to be in charge. And this is coming from somebody like myself that's a diehard Michigan fan. But, and I like Jim Harbaugh. But, I mean, look, he's trying. I think other Michigan fans need to come to terms with the fact that the sun does not rise and set in Ann Arbor based on Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh's tried to leave Michigan the past 2 years. He's kind of embarrassed the program over the past couple years. He tried to leave after 2021, then 2022, he swore he wasn't ever going to do it again. And then he tried to leave again. It doesn't appear right now that he's trying to leave, because apparently there is a contract extension that is in play. I can't imagine him wanting that if he is more or less trying to get out. And I would think at this point he would have some idea if he's going to be able to get a job, because, I mean, 2.5 years being a head football coach at a dominant team, like Michigan. I mean, I feel like if he really wanted to get out, he probably could at this point.
Do you have an issue with Jim Harbaugh looking at NFL jobs?
At this point, yeah, I do. At this point.
But I mean, 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
No, I would say in 2021, when he was talking to a couple of NFL teams, and he basically was public about it. I felt like, okay, he had a really good season. If he didn't really want to be here this whole time, or if he had a change of heart over the past couple of years, this would be his exit. Now, when that fell through, he gave a lot of Michigan fans his word that he wasn't going to do it again. I'm here, it is what it is. That was just a little flirtatious moment, kind of decided against it. Well, the next year he turned around and did the same thing. And then last year he said, I'm here as long as they'll have me. And, at the way I look at it is, you've done given your word at this point. And I know there's a lot at play. It's sports, it's big time sports. Sometimes you have to kind of hide an ace under your sleeve, but at this point he's continuously saying, I'm not going to do something, and he's turning around and doing it. It does get irritating, because look, it's the University of Michigan. I mean, we have our own legacy too. I mean, I don't like playing the gilded girlfriend role against the NFL. I mean, it's not like we're BYU. I mean, it's the University of Michigan. This is a pretty good place to coach too. So that does bother me that he continuously keeps trying to go back. And if all this comes out, the best thing he could do is say, I did my due diligence, but there were some things that were swept under the rug, and it's my fault. Please go easy on us. If he turns around and if he does what he usually does and says, I'm not going to talk to the NCAA, I'm not going to cooperate, I don't think it's going to work out well for us at all, because they've got pretty much everything but concrete evidence on us at this point. And whether he knew about it or not, it's his program. It's his job to know about it.
Well, there's still going to be a huge difference whether he knew about it and that can be proven, or whether it's just a rogue employee acting on their own, and there's still institutional control, lack of control. Those are still going to yield very different penalties.
I agree with you. I think at this point, like I said, his best role would probably, if he really didn't know about anything, would just be to work with the NCAA.
Yes.
As innocent as possible, because he's known for not doing that. Regardless, he's known for taking kind of the bad kid attitude and just, I'm not doing, you're going to have to catch me. And this wouldn't be the right time to do that, in my opinion.
No, if he's as innocent as he lets on to be, yes, he should be cooperating with the NCAA, of school officials, everybody involved, to basically say, and understanding that they're still going to get nicked for lack of institutional control, that he doesn't have control of his operation, but that is going to pale in comparison to him being connected with this. That to me is the complete deciding factor as to whether this is going to be just infractions, allegations, and penalties that are pretty minimal, to this blowing up into one of the worst set of penalties against the football program, is his involvement.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I wanted to say another thing too. There's been a couple coaches that have reached out, and have spoken anonymous. There's been one coach in particular that has pretty much did an entire interview, an unnamed Big Ten coach that has kind of did an anonymous interview on all this and has given his opinions on everything. And it came out today, and it's pretty damning. I mean, he's basically saying, we want action taken right now. This isn't fair, and was just kind of speaking a lot on that. And a lot of people a lot of Michigan fans are thinking it's Ryan Day. I think it's James Franklin. I think it's 100%. I don't think Ryan Day wants that game. I don't see Ryan Day pushing to just cancel Michigan season early, because that's not going to help him. Ryan Day wants to beat Michigan. Ryan Day doesn't want to avoid Michigan. He wants to beat Michigan. James Franklin wants to avoid Michigan. His record against top 5 teams is atrocious, even against top 10 teams. And I think if he could get past Michigan and sail through the regular conference without playing Michigan, it would probably make him look a lot better, because he's kind of under the gun in his own right now. The way he played against Ohio State. I think that was clearly, if you look at the wording, that was James Franklin. I do not think it was.
You're still, that's complete speculation.
It is. Yeah. I'm not saying that 100% is. It's just my opinion. A lot of people are putting it on Ryan Day. Well, that's Ryan Day. He doesn't want to. No, Ryan Day wants to play Michigan.
It's not even really an opinion. It's speculation.
Yeah, that's my Yeah.
Yes.
Ryan Day, like I said, he wants to play Michigan, in my opinion. He wants to. I don't think it's going to do him any favors to avoid Michigan this year. They haven't technically beaten Michigan since 2019, and I think he definitely wants to play Michigan. I know your last caller was talking a lot about, we're going to beat the hell out of Michigan, and that's fine. It could happen, but I'm going to say this: whether there was cheating going on or not, and Ohio State fans, I mean, the floor is theirs, because if we cheated, then we cheated. We deserve it. 100% we deserve it. But cheating or no cheating, clearly there's not going to be any of that. All their signs are going to be changed when we play Ohio State. That's going to be a non-factor. It's going to be just football. And Michigan's got quite a bit of talent, some obvious talent. But, yeah, our record is weak. But there's quite a bit of Ohio State fans chalking up the last 2 seasons to, well, they cheated. Of course, that's why they beat us. Now it all makes sense. Hell, we're going to kill them now.
And you don't understand that?
No, I completely understand it, because I would have the same exact mindset. The exact same. That's why I'm speaking on it, because I understand it that well, because that's what I would think. But the truth of the matter is it's going to be a good game, Mark. I don't think Ohio State is going to blow out Michigan. Could they? Yeah, anything could happen. But I've always said, when you're playing that game, you have to respect to beat your enemies, you have to respect them. And you have to know what you're up against. And Michigan is a very talented team. And if Ohio State, if their players and their staff, they're all going to buy into that, well, they cheated. That's why we're going to go out there and take care of it now. It may end ugly for them. It may not. They may end up killing Michigan. But right now, I would still put my money on Michigan. Signs or no signs. That signs doesn't have anything to do with JJ McCarthy throwing an 80-yard touchdown. And
It doesn't?
well, I mean, he's got this talent. I mean, it's pure talent.
Wait a minute. That doesn't have anything to do with it. If you know what coverage they're in, JJ McCarthy played a really good game in Ohio Stadium last year, but he wasn't making that good of throw.
No, it wasn't perfect at all. It was by no means. But Blake Corum, I'll say last year, a lot of the time they knew what we were doing in 2021 and 22. We were basically imposing our will on them. That was the whole mantra all year, is just running up the middle. They know what we're doing, but they can't stop us. A lot of times on offense, they knew what we were doing a lot of the times. And we did it against Ohio State. We ran it up the middle. We did some little trickery here and there, but a lot of what we were doing was just the same stuff we've been doing all year. And it's worked, but we'll see what happens though. Like I said, I'm excited to watch the game. I really am. I think it's going to be a great game. And, my wife's giving me evil eyes right now, so I better let you go. I think I've been on too long. But I certainly do appreciate it, Mark. And like I said, I think it's going to be a great game, though, man. I'm looking forward to it.
I appreciate the call, man. Have a good night.
You too, man. Bye.
All right. This statement right here is a beaut. Steven says, well, if Urban Meyer can cheat on his wife, okay, depending on what I won't even go there because I don't have to even address these individual issues with the final statement. Okay, Urban Meyer can cheat on his wife and Zach Smith can beat his wife and Tressel buy tattoos. You obviously don't know what happened with Jim Tressel in that whole situation because, yeah, you obviously have no clue of what happened there. But let's say all of those things happened, which A, we don't know that, depending on your definition of cheating. B, we don't know that for sure. C, that is completely false. Anyway, even if, let's assume they're all true. Okay. I don't see how Michigan sign stealing is a bigger problem than the stuff I just listed. Sometimes I don't know how I do it. Okay. Yes, these first two on a human scale are so way beyond everything else in terms of severity, seriousness. We're talking about human beings, talking about violating relationships and violating women. Yes. Okay. There's an obvious distinction between all those supposed Ohio State transgressions and the Michigan one. Do I really need to explain? I guess I do to Stephen. The Michigan transgression involves the competition on the field, football, cheating. And that's what we talk about here. We talk about football and who's the champion, who's better, who's this, who's that. It's all about football. Now, when those other situations come up, of course, we deal with it and the impact on football. But yes, the Penn State situation from 10 years ago versus any recruiting, grade changes, paying off players, all of that, completely different based on, number one, severity of violations against humanity. The Penn State stuff, despicable and disgusting, but that had nothing to do with competition on the field. Zero. It had nothing to do with it. It did not change an outcome of a game in any such way. It cannot be argued in any such way that what Sandusky did and what Paterno allowed had anything to do with football on the field. Recruiting violations, all that stuff, paying off players, changing grades, all that stuff. That obviously has an impact on the field. And that's why it's done. People cheat to win. They cheat to change the result on the field. There is no other reason to cheat. Zero. There is absolutely no other reason that anyone, please, somebody call me and tell me any other reason that anyone would cheat except to change a result. Actually, as a caller stated here earlier tonight, and I said many times weeks ago and said it 50 times, for any Michigan fan or anybody that states they didn't need to cheat, do you know how incredibly stupid that makes Michigan? That if they didn't need to cheat and it didn't change the outcome, it's even more stupid to cheat. That makes it a million times worse. It makes you even more stupid, more idiotic, more moronic to cheat when you didn't need to cheat. So, you know what? For everybody that comes on here and says Michigan didn't need to cheat, I will say that makes them even more stupid. All right. But this is just, yeah. Again, please, this is for all college football fans. This is all for sports fans, or if you really like a celebrity entertainer, enjoy what they do, but your personal self-worth has nothing to do with their accomplishments, with their transgressions, with the good, the bad, the negative, the anything. So don't think that you need to defend any of that. When anything came out about Urban Meyer, after all the Zach Smith stuff and then Urban Meyer 2018, I basically said, yeah, if this is as bad as it could be, possibly is, all that, I want justice to be served. I want people to be protected. I want justice to be served. I'll defend Urban Meyer's coaching record to the hilt. But when it comes to him as if he did something wrong, covered something up, it's nothing to do with me. Doesn't change my personal character or influence me in any such way. Doesn't reflect badly on me. What's that have to do with anything? What Jim Tressel did and what those Ohio State players did was at the time against NCAA rules. Therefore, they were held accountable for that. In retrospect, and even at the time, come on, even a Michigan fan would have to admit that's really stupid. That is really stupid that that would even be that big a deal. It's really dumb, but it's against the rules. So, if you work for a company, take the very most menial rule in the employee handbook and violate that and say, this is really stupid that I got caught doing this and it doesn't matter. But at the same time, you violated the rules. So, but to consider what the penalties were for that versus what the penalties have been for other violations on other teams, like what's happened recently at Tennessee under Jeremy Pruitt, to compare to that, the Tressel situation, it's even 11 or 12 years later, it gives me a headache. I am completely numb to the absurdity of that. Again, they broke a rule. That's a violation. But players won awards. They have the awards. And then they traded them for tattoos. What are we doing here? What in the world? Okay. That obviously didn't harm a soul. All right, let's keep it moving here. The voice of college football. We got Michael Hogue on the line. Michael. Hello, Michael. Oh my goodness, what do we have going on here? Michael's got his shades on as well. Michael, we cannot hear you. That would be a tremendous call, but we cannot hear you. All right, call back. All right, let's keep it moving. Rob, what's going on tonight?
Hey, what's up, Mark? So, this Michigan thing is obviously still going on. It's probably going to be going on for a while, knowing
Yeah.
the NCAA. And um, I think that again, and I'll say this real quickly, just so we don't dwell on it too long. But like, I get it that Michigan fans would want this to be a rogue agent situation with Stallions just being this lone wolf doing his own thing, completely uninvolved with the coaching staff. But I think in their hearts and really in their minds, in the back corner of their minds, they know that's not the case. Like the possibility that he's a rogue agent when he's sitting there next to both the coordinators, telling them, hey, play this, it's like, come on, man, like. And you brought it up. I think the last time we talked, or one of the last times we talked, it's like if you're Coach Harbaugh, and you're suddenly like, man, like these signals are kind of, it's doing us some good here. How are you getting these? Like, you're gonna ask, like, hey, where are you getting this stuff anyway? If you're a paid staffer, like, isn't the head coach gonna inquire about that? Like, isn't he gonna want to know a little bit, like something about that? I don't know. That just seems hilarious to me that people even are thinking, like, trying to convince themselves that this is like a rogue agent.
Yeah. And I think I can put myself in the place that if it were determined, found out 15 years later or whatever, that all these Ohio State games against Michigan were tainted based on something similar to this, would I like that? No, I would think it was horrible. I would think, oh, wow. Maybe they would have won these games anyway. Maybe they wouldn't have, but they cheated. So, but I think I would be able to just kind of face it as, yeah, I feel horrible because it's my team and I don't want my team to look bad and don't want their wins to be compromised. But if they did it, they did it. And so I feel bad for Michigan fans. But again, let's face facts.
Right. Yeah. And I do agree. I think so. When I say that, I'm not also saying that that I want it to be the case. Like, me personally, as an outsider, I have no dog in the race with Michigan. I don't like Michigan particularly well. I don't root for them, right? But I don't really want this to be a situation where he is involved with Harbaugh. Like, I'd prefer that he's a rogue agent, but I just think that's so far outside the realm of possibility that's not even something that I'll really consider. I mean, innocent until proven guilty, whatever. But I think the more that we find out about this going forward, I think it's going to, unfortunately, give us more insight on what's going on there.
That is exactly where I stand. And I said that from the very day that this news broke, that I hope, and you wouldn't think that you would hear this from other Ohio State fans, but I wanted this to be completely untrue and for there to be no violations and that all the games are clean and pure and competitive and what they are supposed to be.
Right. Now, if Ohio State goes out there and beats Michigan this year, and I'm not saying like by a little bit, but like if they spank Michigan, I mean, and that doesn't prove anything, but I mean, anyway, I'll just leave it at that.
It's not going to
yeah.
have a good look after
Right.
winning every year, and then losing twice and then coming back and
Yeah, that's not a good look if you're a Michigan. Well, just Michigan football, as you said, fans really don't have anything to do with it. You can be a fan of a team, and the team can be a champion or go completely defeated, and it doesn't mean you really had a part of it. But certainly not a good look for the University of Michigan.
Yeah.
That's.
But you're right. It would not prove anything, not at
Right.
all. But it doesn't look good.
Now, pivoting off the Michigan issue real quick, did you hear the radio call with Dabo Sweeney and Tyler from wherever Stony Brook or whatever it was?
I've heard it talked about, but I have not listened to it myself.
So so you've heard about it. Just to kind of paraphrase, he kind of took the entirety of this caller's, rant, and then he interjected and said like, "Hey, I don't have to answer to you." And again, I'm paraphrasing, but he's like, he basically called the fan part of the problem. Things of that nature. Like I won 2 championships here, 30 years. Clemson didn't sniff a championship. Blah blah blah. That's why I'm paid so much money. And I'm paraphrasing. I'm not like calling out Dabo or anything. I'm curious as like, obviously he's frustrated, and I can understand. He's got a lot of heat on him this year. I think Clemson's 4-4. They have a chance to go 4-5 against Notre Dame this coming Saturday. So he's in a rough spot, somewhere that he's not used to, especially recently. Clemson's been the elite of the elite for the last, decade essentially. So he's got a lot of fans kind of starting to question his decisions and all this. Like, I'm curious, what do you think about coaches? Because it's his radio show. It's like a radio call-in show that he had,
Yeah.
almost, kind of like this a little bit. But what are your stance on a coach kind of, standing his ground against a fan? Now, I will say I didn't paraphrase much of what the fan said. He was being kind of a jerk. I'll say that. He was basically giving like character jabs at Dabo, calling him arrogant and things like that. And so I don't know. Since you didn't really hear the whole thing, it's kind of hard to ask you that, I guess. But just your
Yeah,
general
I've
thoughts.
only heard about it, but these radio call-in shows with these coaches have been going on forever.
Right.
And I've heard about some interesting interactions, but typically the host has some control over the show. And if somebody's too out of hand, they will cut them off. But they apparently let this guy go on and on and on. I think Dabo Sweeney has, now I expect him to take the higher road than the caller because he's in a position of authority and he is the public figure. I would expect him to take, but that doesn't mean he has to take a beating across the brow. That he should be allowed to defend his record and his time. And it sounds like that's what he did, even in the face of taking all these personal attacks.
Right. Yeah, I'm kind of a fan of I've kind of followed Clemson for a while. I think we had a good, ever since like 2015, they kind of got their start. They beat us at Clemson, went on to face Alabama that year, lost in the championship, and then came back the next year and won.
The 2-point conversion game.
Yeah. So I've been kind of watching Clemson, kind of rooting for them, almost as like seeing their rise and now their fall, apparently, because we've kind of clobbered in the last, couple times. And I think this year, is going to be another. I think we're going to beat Clemson here. But I don't know. Clemson, if they play their absolute A game, they can definitely still win this game. They're just going to have to play at their best.
You
and it is
clobbered them more than once?
Well, not like in the playoffs. Obviously, they clobbered us back, but we beat them in 2020. We clobbered them last year, and that was like a physical. That was like a beatdown. I shouldn't say clobbered, but
yeah, that was an overtime game.
Right. Yeah, I shouldn't say
2020 game.
But yeah,
and they didn't have Trevor Lawrence, and
right.
then they
but
won.
DJ still had a great game that game. But yes, Trevor came back, and that game, I will say, I think it was Kyle Hamilton. We were actually like doing really well against Clemson in that playoff game until he got like out of the game. Once he went out, that's when kind of Clemson started picking on the backup. And
okay, you're going back to the playoff game of 2018, not the 2020 ACC championship game.
No. Well, that 2020, that's the year that Clemson buzzsawed Alabama in the championship, right?
No, 2018.
Oh, 2018. No, that's right. No, 2020 is Alabama. Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, I'm getting my years mixed up, but I digress. Anyways, I'm okay with Dabo kind of going off a little bit because I think he has earned it. I will say though, like you, I think he probably should have taken a little bit more of the high road, just because he is a coach. He is kind of expected to represent his university in a little bit more of a professional manner. It's not like he went nuts, but I do think it's frustrating if you're a coach that's taken a team like Clemson from quote unquote Clemsoning to being, probably the second most respected team in the last, decade. I mean, up there with Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, the elite of the elite. So I think for fans that are just going to call in and give Dabo a lot of flack now, it's a little bit interesting to me because, I mean, who wouldn't want what Dabo has done for that program in your program? Like, unless you're Alabama, unless you're Georgia, maybe Ohio State, who wouldn't want a coach to go on a run like that for their university? You know what I mean? So it's just like, we got people like, Marcus Freeman. We're hoping he pans out and becomes something great. USC's got their problems with Lincoln Riley. You got, you know, Jimbo Fisher, Texas A&M. He's constantly on the hot seat. Seems like. I mean, there's all kinds of coaches that go places and perhaps underperform or whatever. But you got Dabo, who's been a consistent winner, and this is his first real bad year in quite a long time. So I don't know. I just found it interesting. But question about the. Oh, go ahead.
What? I just have one question. What in particular did the caller have to say about Dabo's salary?
Yeah, it was. He's like, what are we paying you $11.5 million for a 4-4 season? So, like I said, he's kind of taking shots at him, basically saying you're essentially implying that he's overpaid, right? And that he's underachieving. Which, to be fair, Clemson is having a bad year. There's no question about it. But one bad year in how many? I mean, you can't be perfect every year. And there's not many Nick Sabans out there that are defying the odds year in and year out, right? I mean, a lot of places coaches get fired. If you're a coach at I mean, just look at Ed Orgeron at US or LSU, right? He won a title in 2019. Granted, he had a transitional, generational level quarterback in Joe Burrow, and that team was just, I mean, had so many weapons. But what do? They fired him in the next, was it 2021? No, yeah, 2021 they fired him, right?
Yes.
And then Brian Kelly went down there. So anyway, I just think be careful what you wish for, Clemson fans, because yeah, Dabo's not perfect, and yeah, there's problems there. He needs to embrace the portal more, I think. I mean, there's things that he needs to do, but you lose Dabo, I mean, you better hope you get somebody that can, fill his shoes even halfway. That's what I'd say.
They're still recruiting in the top 10 in the nation, and for as bad as 4-4 is, and it's not up to their expectations or standards by any stretch, they were still outplaying Florida State for the majority of that game. And I'm not making excuses. They lost the game fair and square, but just looking at their level of play when they were fully healthy and focused, they were still able to play at that level. So I don't know that they're that far off their game. I think that there are changes that need to be made. Their offensive line is no good, and they got to find a quarterback. Either Klubnik needs to improve considerably, or they've got to find somebody else, and they got a 5-star right behind him, Chris Vizina. But I don't think they're far away from getting back into the mix.
Yeah, that defense is still really good. I mean, people forget, Clemson's got a really solid defense. It's just their offensive line, like you said, and their quarterback needs to step it up. And they don't really have Bo Collins is their best receiver this year, I think.
Yeah, they've had a really interesting run with wide receivers, because for 10 years they arguably had the best wide receiver room in the country. Most likely they did. And now, starting with their first off season, and when I mean off season, I mean their first down season for them in 21, when they went 10-3, suddenly they had no one. Like, they looked like I'd watch games and it looked like I was watching like Illinois' passing attack, like not just from the quarterback position. They had no guys that could just out athlete the defender type of athletes, and they've not been able to recover. Actually, their wide receivers are playing okay this year. They're catching the ball. They're playing functional offense, but after being awful for a couple of years. But yeah, they do not have the DeAndre Hopkins, Sammy Watkins, Mike Williams guy.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird. You think that you think Klubnik would have advanced a little bit more with Garrett Riley heading over there.
Yeah.
But who knows? About the Big Ten real quick, or should I say the Big 18? Like, when is like a conference, like, Is it just going to keep going by the Big Ten? Do you think? I mean, obviously, right?
Absolutely.
That's the plan.
It's a brand name.
Right. It's just funny because it's like pretty soon it'll be the Big 20. I mean, they're already
Well,
the biggest. Like going into next year, they'll be the biggest conference, right?
well, is there any difference between having 11 teams and having 45 teams and calling yourself the Big Ten? Like if you're tied to the number, then it should have been changed in 1993. So
No,
just
absolutely. No,
it's been
you're
going on
right.
for 30 years.
Yeah, I was just kind of laughing at this situation. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you. I think Big Ten sounds better, and it's a like you said, it's a brand name. It's well known. It's just funny that these conferences are getting so big. I mean, with what Tex or SEC now, I think they have 14. No, is it 14 or
It'll
16?
be 16
16,
next
yeah,
year.
16 next year. 18 for the Big Ten. The ACC has like 14. Um,
Well, the Big
so
12 is also doing that as well. They
right.
will stay the Big 12 and they've got 16 teams.
I mean, do you see a future where there's maybe just two conferences at some point, where they just keep merging, or it's just I suck. It sucks that the Pac-12 is dissolving. I guess that's where I'm.
Yeah, it
You
does.
know,
You know,
I do
I
like the
I think that we could get to a point that would almost reverse time because if the SEC and the Big Ten just mowed through everyone, and if they cared to, uh, let's face it, for all these teams having solidarity, or all these schools, I should say, under the umbrella of the ACC or the Big 12, they really don't, because any of those schools would jump to the SEC or the Big 10 if they were offered. But those conferences have no reason. They've pretty much hit their threshold of, except for Florida State, Miami, Clemson, Notre Dame. Aside from there is a we're getting to a point, at least with the Big 10 and the SEC. Now, what the Big 12 would take is different, but the SEC and the Big 10 only have about 4 to 6 more schools out there that they would consider and would almost definitely take. But if those two conferences wanted to wipe out college football, they could, but then they become so large that they become basically two NFLs to themselves with 30 some pushing 40 schools, that you have to split them up into divisions anyway, and then
right.
it resembles what it is, or what it
Yeah,
used to be, because the Big Ten would have to have like a West division and then a Central division,
yeah,
and the SEC would have to do the same thing depending on where they're located. They would have to have a Atlantic division and a Plains division and whatever. Yeah.
yeah. That's true. Yeah, yeah. It's kind of funny there. It is a shame though. Like I would say this, and I've never thought that I would say this as a Notre Dame fan, like, because I've always been like pro independent just because it's been our tradition for so long. But I think I'm actually at the point now where I would be okay if Notre Dame joined the Big Ten. Now, unfortunately, that's not going to happen. I think if they did join a conference, it'd be the ACC because they're already in the ACC and all their other sports,
Yep.
and they've got a little bit of a tradition there the last several years, but. I would rather see them in the Big Ten just because now with USC being in the Big Ten, Michigan, I'd like to see that rivalry come back, and Michigan State. I love beating Michigan State because nobody likes Michigan State. Sorry, Michigan State fans, but yeah, I mean, if there was going to be a conference, I wish Notre Dame could join the Big Ten, but they'll probably just keep staying independent on football with a partial AC schedule going forward like they have right now.
Yeah, what I would do if I was the Big Ten, if I understand this correctly, with Notre Dame as being part of the Big Ten in hockey, no offense to you, of course, Rob, but that would be kind of the last straw, thinking, okay, well, that ruins our chance of getting Notre Dame into the Big Ten in all sports, especially football. So I would kick them out in hockey.
Right.
Is what I
Well, they
would do.
should. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if I was the Big Ten, and I wouldn't like, and same for the ACC. I don't know why the ACC tolerates it. Like,
Oh, well, that's a completely different level of tolerance. I think the Big
right,
Ten does it because they want, as long as there is hope that Notre Dame would join the Big Ten, they obviously want to continue that hockey relationship and not piss them off. But the ACC has been completely abused by Notre Dame.
yeah, it's kind of funny because I think Notre Dame has like a 32-1 regular season record
Oh,
against the ACC.
yes, it's
And
crazy.
and Louisville, to give them some credit, I mean, they really, I don't think they're the better team this year, but hey, hats off to them. They beat us,
They
and
finally broke the streak.
they
Yeah.
stopped the streak. Yeah, so good on Louisville there. But anyways, Mark, I'm going to let you go. I know you got a lot of other callers probably, so always good talking to you.
Yeah. Thanks for calling, Rob.
Yeah,
Appreciate
no
it.
problem. Mhm.
And I will reiterate where I stood on this back in 2020. I couldn't produce enough videos. Not that I produced 18 videos on it, but I certainly had live streams and produced 1 or 2 videos in some way to just, I could not be emphatic enough at yelling and screaming at the ACC to say, what are you doing? There's a pandemic. It's turned the college football world upside down. There's all this chaos and scrambling to try to determine how they're going to each conference piece together a season. And Notre Dame is left out on its own. They have no one to play, basically. ACC, this is your perfect opportunity to hold Notre Dame accountable. But what did the ACC do? They threw them a life raft for the season. And then the only thing that didn't work out perfectly in throwing this back in the face of the ACC is that Notre Dame needed to win the ACC. I was rooting for Notre Dame to win the ACC in 2020 so it could just slam that right back in the face of the ACC to basically say, we abuse you. We completely take advantage of you. You allow us in for one football season. We win your conference, and then we say, see ya. Just the lack of confidence, self-esteem, the inferior nature that the ACC takes on by being abused by Notre Dame to say, we will join in all those other sports, but not in football. I just can't stomach it. And I can't try to pretend that I have a respect for the ACC in its dealings with Notre Dame, because I don't. I just think it's pathetic beyond belief. All right, folks. We will call it quits here at the Voice of College Football for a Thursday night. There's some good football, I believe, on tonight. We've got Wake and Duke. I believe they've kicked off, as have Texas Tech and TCU. So you get marginal football teams playing on Thursday and Friday. Let's just call it what it is. We never have great teams playing on Thursday and Friday. But hey, if you like Power 5 football, dive into those, watch them. I will. I got to get something to eat for sure. And keep it locked in here for all of our content here at the Voice of College Football. And there is more to come, because really what I want to do, because we didn't do it much tonight, is produce a video breaking down this Big Ten schedule for 2024. We already knew the opponents, but now that we've got an order, we'd like to go through that. And then we also have, maybe I'll listen to this Dabo Sweeney. Maybe there's a video forthcoming. I don't have enough time to actually produce the videos that we would like to produce for all this stuff. If you only knew my master plan in all this, and whether I'll be able to pull it off or not, I don't know. But if my master plan would work out, then I would be able to take the time to produce all these various videos, because we've got not just the Big Ten schedule being announced for 2024, we have the Big 12 and the ACC, and I'm guessing the other conferences came out with their schedules as well. So I would like to run through those as well. What do we have here? We've got, check it out, says Mark, will you do a follow-up tomorrow regarding the Big Ten ADs and Tony meeting? That will be tonight. If we get some kind of information from it that's reasonable, I understand we can talk about this like all the time. Like we could do a 24/7 stream of just talking about this NCAA investigation. But much like realignment, I like to wait until there's actual news and there's something substantial to talk about. I could have gotten a lot more viewers and subscribers the last 3 or 4 years by just talking about realignment every day, but I chose not to do that. All right, folks, we appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Again, I believe the USC guys are probably still at it over on the USC show taking calls. So jump on over there, check them out. And again, keep it locked in here because we've got more content going out there. We've got the Steve Merrill Wager Talk, the prediction videos. Check those out. They're great. He's phenomenal. We post those to just about all the channels as well. All right, folks. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. We will see you on Friday. Go to games all the time, or you've got your heart set on that one huge matchup, go to ticketsmarter.com to save big. TicketSmarter technology gives you the best competitive prices on the secondary market. Your purchase price is safe and guaranteed. Use promo code BIG, B-I-G, to get $10 off of any purchase of at least $100, or the promo code BIG20, BIG20, to get $20 off of any purchase of at least $300. Use the promo code as many times as you'd like. There is no limit. Get in the game with ticketsmarter.com or the TicketSmarter mobile app. Think smarter, Ticket Smarter. Go to games all the time, or you've got your heart set on that one huge matchup, go to ticketsmarter.com to save big. TicketSmarter technology gives you the best competitive prices on the secondary market. Your purchase price is safe and guaranteed. Use promo code BIG, B-I-G, to get $10 off of any purchase of at least $100, or the promo code BIG20, BIG20, to get $20 off of any purchase of at least $300. Use the promo code as many times as you'd like. There is no limit. Get in the game with ticketsmarter.com or the TicketSmarter mobile app. Think smarter, Ticket Smarter.